I'm Jane Evans, and I am the author of How Are You Feeling Today, Baby Bear? I'm going to talk to you about domestic abuse and young children, and particularly at this time. So I'm recording this during the COVID virus. We've seen very much in the media that there's been a very big increase. Of course, we yet to know how high that is in instance of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And that will mean that in many, many households where this is occurring, there will be children present. So, of course, these children are in the next few weeks or months going to be coming back, hopefully coming back into earlier settings, into primary schools, junior schools, and secondary schools, and just going to be much more visible in our community. So why has there been this increase in domestic abuse and domestic violence? So some of the posts you might have seen might be saying, oh, it's because of the virus, it's because of lockdown. Well, it isn't because of a virus that somebody chooses to hit, harm, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, in many other ways, control another human being. It's because there are more opportunities for this to happen. And, you know, we're familiar with this very sadly from every time of the year when families spend a lot more time together. So I used to work in domestic abuse services, and post Christmas, so on into January, referrals used to go through the roof. You know, the helpline, there just wasn't enough time in the day to man the helpline, and we certainly didn't have enough places in refuge. And of course, post summer holidays as well, another time when families are intensively spending time together, and so therefore there are more opportunities to harm, terrorize, and otherwise abuse an intimate partner. And of course, always the children suffer and are abused within this as well. There's this misconception that, you know, if children aren't in the room, then they are witnesses of domestic abuse and domestic violence. So I've just got a couple of slides to show you here, just to clarify what I'm talking about. So the thing is that there is no such thing as children being witnesses. That kind of gives the impression that, you know, they're around, and, you know, we used to believe, it used to be strongly believed that children were not even impacted by domestic abuse and domestic violence. But now, fortunately, science has moved on and research has moved on, and we know that if a child lives in an environment that is emotionally and physically unsafe most of the time, there is ongoing tension in the environment, and therefore it has an impact on the child's developing brain and developing body, their emotional development, their sense of how safe the world is, how safe other people are, and, you know, their self-worth. And from the many families I've worked with over the years, what I have seen again and again is that kind of obviously where there is this threat all the time in the environment, then the available caring parent often just does not have opportunities to emotionally soothe, connect, and keep their children feeling and being safe. So it's really important to know that domestic abuse and domestic violence are very much sensory experiences. So what does that mean? Well, we store information from the environment, from what's going on around us, all the time, all of us as children, as adults, you know, through our sense of smell, through what we see, through what we hear, through what we sense through our body systems. Even, you know, if a child is eating something or there's a certain type of food around, when scenes of domestic violence take place or the build up to it, Definitely touch on the body. That's very much stored as a sensory memory as well, but particularly smell. So if a child is back in a setting, in a nursery or a school, and they have lived with any level of domestic abuse or domestic violence, then you can understand that in the daily life of a busy setting, that there will be many triggers for that child. Just, you know, a door slamming somewhere, you can imagine the fear that that might put through a child. Or it could be the smell. It could be the smell of a food cooking in the school kitchens. It could be the smell of somebody's scent or aftershave. It could be the colour of their top. Now, of course, the child won't be able to recognise, oh, this is a trigger for me, and that's why I've suddenly wet myself, or suddenly started crying, or suddenly have to get out of the classroom, or I'm suddenly running down a corridor, or, you know, someone's trying to block my way and now I've hit out at them. A child can't possibly know that. And as adults, we often misinterpret as well. But be aware that there will be some children who've gone through this period of isolation and withdrawal from society and had the most wonderful time being at home, playing in the garden, maybe, you know, older children spending far too much time on Facebook, or there's probably a lot more fancy things there on than Facebook. But there definitely, of course, will be those children. But we know as well that coming are many children who have had varying degrees of living and being in what feels like, sounds like, looks like, even smells like a threatening, unpredictable, explosive environment, and may very well at times have been. And we can't expect them to tell us about this. You know, a child who has been through this experience, their system learns. It has to learn fast because they have to adapt, because they cannot escape from what they find themselves in. You know, the adult who's being abused directly can't escape, and the children who are being either physically, emotionally abused directly as well also cannot escape. But what we know is that their systems will constantly be being flicked through either freeze and complete shutdown, or, you know, having to literally get away and go and hide, or having the urge to get away but not being able to hide, maybe having to, you know, defend themselves in some way, or trying to defend the parent that's being abused, or they might work out accidentally that being the very good child they feel sometimes keeps them and maybe their siblings or the parent who's being abused a bit safer. So this has a massive impact on all parts of a child, and it really affects their emotional development as well. They have to and will be cut off from all the feelings in their body, all the emotions, although they will be there and they will be very powerful ones. And they go through this desperate need and drive to be emotionally connected with a safe adult whilst not having access to it. So emotionally, they may very well come back to your settings in a complete state of chaos, or every time the tone slightly goes up in the classroom or in the playroom they're in, they go into a complete rock solid state of rigidity, and they seem to be being difficult, but in reality they've just gone into a complete state of terror, which is beyond their control. So just to be aware of these things and to go very slowly and very gently. Now, you can't fix these children, you can't take away their pain and their suffering, but what you can do is show up yourselves as this very calm, safe, kind presence for them. My book that I showed you at the beginning, this is just a really useful tool, and at the back it has a simple guide of how to use it. I wouldn't recommend at all reading it in any kind of circle time situation, because you don't know what's happened to the children there. And a child might be listening and seeing things, and because you've got a group of them, you can't spot that they've suddenly become really frozen in a state of fear and terror. You need to be, if you have any concerns, obviously this is a safeguarding issue, but if you have children appear in your setting who you know have experienced domestic abuse, then consult with the safe parent they have now and anyone who's working with them, and then explore the possibility of sharing how you're feeling baby bear with them, but do look at the guidance at the back. So this is just to give you a little bit of insight and hopefully a bit more confidence that, you know, if you are their early years practitioner, if you are their teacher, if you are their support worker at school, then they may be absolutely delighted to see you, even though they can't show it, because before they left you, you were their safety, and now they're looking for you to show again that you're their calm, safe person.